multimillionaire CEO walked into his ex-fiancée's wedding with a woman nobody expected. And what happened next shattered everything they thought they knew about love, pride, and second chances. The massive oak doors of the Fairmont estate stood before him like gates to a past he'd tried to bury. Dominic Cross, 42, silver threading through dark hair, jaw tight enough to crack stone, adjusted his cufflinks with fingers that had signed billion-dollar deals without trembling. Today, they shook. The September air in rural Connecticut carried the scent of white roses and something sharper, the metallic taste of old wounds reopening. Behind him, gravel crunched under expensive shoes. He didn't turn around. Not yet. "You know this is certifiably insane, right?" The voice belonged to the woman at his side, and it cut through his spiraling thoughts like a blade through silk. Now he turned. Mara Jennings stood there in a dress the color of midnight, deep navy that made her auburn hair look like controlled fire. She wasn't beautiful in the magazine cover way Vanessa had been. Mara was something else entirely. Sharp-edged, real, with green eyes that had seen too much to pretend anymore, and a mouth that curved into something between a smirk and a warning. She'd been his executive assistant for 3 years. She'd seen him at his worst, the 4 a.m. Panic attacks after the Shanghai deal nearly collapsed, the night he'd thrown a crystal tumbler against his office wall, and she'd simply handed him a broom. And 6 weeks ago, on a rain-soaked Tuesday when he'd confessed he couldn't face Vanessa's wedding invitation alone, she'd said yes to this charade with exactly 0 hesitation and 1 condition. "We do this my way, Cross. No scripts, no performance, just truth wearing a different outfit." "Insane is my baseline," he said, offering his arm. "You're just now figuring that out? I knew it when you bought that Portuguese winery because you liked the name." Her hand slipped through his elbow, warm even through the fabric. "But this is next-level self-destruction masquerading as closure. Maybe I'm tired of running. Or maybe you just want to see her face when she realizes you're not the broken man she left." The truth of it hit like a physical blow. 3 years ago, Vanessa Hartford had stood in his penthouse, the one overlooking Central Park, the one he'd bought specifically because she'd whispered it was her dream, and told him she couldn't marry a man who loved his empire more than her. She'd been right. He'd worked 80-hour weeks, missed dinners, canceled trips, prioritized mergers over moments. And when she'd walked out, he'd told himself it was for the best. That love was a liability, that he was better off alone. Then the invitation had arrived, cream-colored and monogrammed. "Vanessa Hartford and Trevor Blackwood request the honor of your presence." Trevor Blackwood, old money, sailing club pedigree, a man who probably knew what work-life balance meant. "I need to prove something," Dominic said quietly. "To her or to you?" He didn't answer, because he didn't know. The estate sprawled before them. Manicured lawns, white tents billowing in the breeze, guests in pastels and designer suits mingling with champagne flutes. Somewhere in that crowd, Vanessa was preparing to marry someone else. And he was about to walk in with Mara, a woman who knew every scar in his armor, who'd never asked him to be anything other than exactly who he was. "Last chance to turn around," Mara murmured, but her fingers tightened on his arm, steadying, not releasing. "I've never been good at retreat." "No," she said, something unreadable flickering across her face. "You really haven't." They walked forward, and Dominic felt the weight of eyes turning, conversations pausing mid-sentence. He'd built an empire on confidence, on walking into rooms and owning them. But this was different. This was walking back into the life he'd lost and pretending he'd found something better. The terrifying part. With Mara's hand on his arm, the scent of her perfume, something warm and cedar sharp, grounding him, it didn't feel entirely like pretending. A server offered champagne. Mara took 2 glasses, handed him one, and raised hers slightly. To terrible ideas and the people who enable them. To facing the past, he countered. To not getting punched by the groom, she shot back, and despite everything, he almost smiled. Then he saw her, Vanessa, across the garden, in white lace and radiant happiness, her hand on Trevor's arm. And the exact moment her gaze found his, the smile froze on her face. Shock, confusion, something that might have been hurt flickering across features he'd once memorized in darkness. Mara leaned closer, her breath warm against his ear. Showtime, Cross. Try not to bleed on the hors d'oeuvres. The ceremony was torture, dressed in string quartets and floral arrangements. Dominic sat 3 rows back, Mara beside him, her presence the only thing keeping him from walking out. The minister's voice droned through traditional vows: love, honor, cherish, words that felt like accusation and absolution tangled together. He'd never made it this far with Vanessa. They'd set a date twice, postponed it twice, and by the 3rd attempt, she'd simply stopped trying. You're gripping that program like it personally offended you, Mara whispered. He loosened his fingers, smoothed the crumpled paper. I'm fine. You're the opposite of fine. You're whatever word means fine, but in Italian and on fire. That's not a thing. It is now. I just invented it for you. Despite himself, the corner of his mouth twitched. This was what Mara did. Cut through his darkness with sharp humor, refused to let him drown in his own head. In the office, she was ruthlessly efficient, the only person who could tell him no and make it stick. But in private moments, late nights reviewing contracts, early mornings when the city was still sleeping and they were the only 2 people in his glass tower, she was this: real, unguarded, willing to call him on every self-destructive impulse. When this is over, she murmured, we're getting extremely drunk and you're telling me the whole story, the real one, not the sanitized version you told Forbes. There's nothing to tell. Dominic. She said his name like a scalpel making an incision. I've worked for you long enough to know when you're lying. And you're lying. The minister pronounced them married. Vanessa and Trevor kissed, and the crowd erupted in applause. Dominic felt nothing. Or maybe he felt everything, and it all canceled out into this hollow numbness. Mara's hand found his knee under cover of standing, squeezed once. Breathe. You've survived worse. Have I? You survived that shareholders' meeting where Marcus tried to stage a coup. You survived the Tokyo negotiations. You can survive a wedding. Those had clear objectives. This is just witnessing. No, she said quietly, green eyes searching his face. This is letting go. The reception sprawled across the estate's back gardens. White tents, jazz band, tables laden with food he couldn't taste. Dominic positioned himself at the bar, Mara a warm constant at his side, and watched Vanessa float through her own celebration like she'd been born to this life of ease and elegance. Dominic Cross. The voice came from behind, smooth and practiced. Didn't expect to see you here. He turned to find Trevor Blackwood himself, tall, tennis club tan, smile that probably came standard with the trust fund. Everything Dominic had built himself to become, this man had been born into. Trevor, congratulations. He shook the offered hand, measured the grip, firm but not competitive, a man secure in what he had. Thank you for coming. Vanessa will be surprised. Trevor's gaze shifted to Mara, curiosity naked on his face. I don't believe we've met. Mara Jennings. She extended her hand, and Dominic watched Trevor's eyes do that thing men's eyes did when they first saw her. The quick assessment, the appreciation, the slight confusion that someone this striking was standing beside Dominic Cross like she belonged there. I work with Dominic, Well, technically I work for him, but he likes to pretend it's more collaborative. She runs my life, Dominic said. I just sign the checks. A man who knows his place. Trevor laughed, but there was something careful in how he watched them. Vanessa mentioned you were unattached. Things change, Mara said smoothly, and her hand slipped into Dominic's with practiced ease. The touch sent unexpected electricity up his arm. Too real for performance, too deliberate to be accidental. Trevor's smile never wavered. Well, I'm glad you found someone. Vanessa worried, you know. After everything. The words landed like stones. After everything. After she'd left. After he'd let her go. After he'd proven her right by diving deeper into work, building his empire higher, fortifying the walls that kept everyone safely distant. She needn't have, Dominic said, and Mara's fingers tightened around his. No, I suppose not. Trevor's gaze lingered on their joined hands. Enjoy the evening. And Dominic, I hope there's no hard feelings. What Vanessa and I have, it's different than what you two had. Not better, just different.
He walked away, and Dominic felt Mara studying him. You okay? Define okay. Not planning to start a very public fight or make a very dramatic exit. Then yes, I'm okay. She didn't let go of his hand. He didn't pull away. And somewhere in the careful space between them, something shifted, like tectonic plates grinding into new alignment, silent but seismic. The band shifted into something slow, couples drifting onto the dance floor. Dominic watched Vanessa dance with her father, watched Trevor wait his turn with the patience of a man who'd never had to fight for anything in his life. Dance with me, Mara said. Not a question. Here? Where else? Come on, Cross. You dragged me to Connecticut. The least you can do is not make me drink alone at the bar. She pulled him onto the floor, into the orbit of other couples, and he settled his hand at her waist, feeling the warmth of her through navy silk, the way she fit against him with none of the careful distance Vanessa had always maintained. Mara danced like she did everything, direct, unafraid, present. You're thinking too loud, she said. Occupational hazard. Want to know what I'm thinking? Probably that you should have demanded hazard pay for this assignment. I'm thinking, she said, ignoring his deflection, that you've spent 3 years turning yourself into someone who doesn't need anyone. And I'm thinking that's the saddest empire I've ever seen. The words hit harder than any of Trevor's careful politeness. He missed a step, recovered. That's not Dominic. She looked up at him, and he saw the honesty there. No performance, no careful professional distance. Just Mara, who'd seen him at 4 a.m. and never flinched. I know you. Better than you think I do. And this? She gestured subtly at the wedding, the guests, the life he'd almost had. This isn't about her anymore. It's about whether you're brave enough to want something that scares you. And what scares me? Being known, she said simply. Being seen. Letting someone in far enough to actually hurt you. The song ended. She stepped back, and the absence of her warmth felt like loss. I need air, he said. I know. I'll be at the bar. Drinking your share too. He walked toward the garden's edge, past the laughter and music, until the sounds faded into the September night. And he tried very hard not to think about how Mara's hand had felt in his, how right it had been, how terrifying. Behind him, he heard footsteps on gravel. Dominic. He turned. Vanessa stood there, wedding dress ghostly in the moonlight, face unreadable. We need to talk. Vanessa looked the same. Blonde hair styled in soft waves.
blue eyes that had once seen straight through him, skin that probably cost hundreds in monthly facials. But there was something different too. Something settled. Happy. "You came," she said. "You invited me." "I didn't think you would. I told Trevor you wouldn't." She stepped closer, careful of her train. "Who is she? Really?" "Mara, my assistant." "Your assistant?" Vanessa's laugh held no humor. "Of course. That's very you, Dominic. Mixing business and pleasure until you can't tell them apart." "That's not what this is. Isn't it?" She tilted her head, studying him with the focus she used to bring to their arguments. "You brought your employee to my wedding as your date. That's either the most emotionally healthy thing you've ever done, or the most emotionally stunted. I'm genuinely not sure which. Why do you care?" The question hung between them, sharp-edged. "Because I did love you," she said quietly, "and I hated how we ended. I hated that you chose the Empire over us, over any possibility of us. And I hated myself for not being enough to make you choose differently. Vanessa, let me finish." She held up a hand, diamond engagement ring catching moonlight. "I'm happy now. Trevor is good to me. He comes home at 6. He takes Sundays off. He wants children and dogs and a life that exists outside boardrooms. And I don't have to beg for any of it. But seeing you here, with her, looking at her the way you never quite looked at me." She trailed off. "It made me wonder if I was the problem. If you could have been that man, just not for me." The truth crystallized, brutal and clear. "You weren't the problem. I was. I am. I don't know how to be the man who comes home at 6. I don't know how to want anything more than I want to build, to win, to prove." He stopped. "To prove I matter. You matter without the Empire, Dominic. You always did." "I don't know how to believe that." Vanessa stepped close enough to touch him, but didn't. "Then maybe start learning. Because that woman in there, she's looking at you like you already do. And if you can't see that, you're more lost than I thought." She kissed his cheek, brief, sisterly, final, and walked back toward the music, toward the life she'd chosen without him. Dominic stood alone in the garden, her words echoing in his skull. "She's looking at you like you already do." He thought of Mara at the bar, drinking his share, waiting without demanding. Thought of 3 years of her steady presence, her refusal to be impressed by his wealth or intimidated by his moods. Thought of how she'd said yes to this insane plan without hesitation. How she'd held his hand. How she'd told him the truth even when it hurt. Being known. Being seen. He walked back toward the reception, searching the crowd for auburn hair and a navy dress. Found her exactly where she'd promised. At the bar, 2 empty glasses beside her, laughing at something the bartender said. Her whole face transformed when she laughed, guards dropping, and he realized with the force of a punch that he wanted to be the reason for that transformation. Wanted it more than he'd wanted a merger or acquisition or victory in years. She saw him approaching, smile shifting into something more careful. Survive the conversation? Barely. Need another drink or a quick exit? Neither. He settled beside her, close enough to feel her warmth. I need to tell you something. Sounds ominous. Mara. He turned to face her fully, and she went very still. This was supposed to be pretend, a performance, proof to Vanessa that I'd moved on. And? Her voice had gone quiet, careful. And I don't think I'm pretending anymore. The words sat between them, too honest for the setting, too raw for a wedding reception. Mara stared at him, green eyes wide, something like fear and hope warring across her face. Dominic, don't. He caught her hand, Don't tell me all the reasons this is a bad idea. Don't tell me I'm your boss, or this is rebound, or I'm confusing gratitude with feeling. Just tell me if I'm completely alone in this." The bartender had moved away, giving them privacy. The music played on. The world kept spinning, and Mara looked at him like he'd just asked her to jump off a cliff without knowing if there was water below. "You're not alone," she whispered. "You're terrifying and frustrating, and you've been breaking my heart in slow motion for 3 years. But no, you're not alone." He kissed her, right there, in the middle of his ex-fiancée's wedding reception, with guests milling around and champagne flowing, and a life he'd almost lived playing out in the background. He kissed Mara Jennings like she was air, and he was drowning. She kissed him back. It wasn't gentle. It was 3 years of proximity and professional distance, and nights working late and moments of almost. It was every time she'd steadied him, challenged him, seen through him. It was honest and messy and completely real. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Mara pressed her forehead to his. "We're going to have to talk about the power dynamics and HR implications and approximately 17 other complications," she said. "Tomorrow. And you're going to have to actually deal with your workaholic tendencies and emotional unavailability. Next week. Dominic." "Mara." He cupped her face, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "I know I'm a disaster. I know I'll probably disappoint you. I know I'm better at building empires than relationships, but I want to try. With you, if you'll let me." That's the worst pitch I've ever heard. "I'm out of practice." She laughed, and it sounded like breaking open. "Okay. Okay? Okay, we'll try. But cross? If you choose the empire over me even once, I'm gone. No second chances. No negotiations. Clear?" "Crystal. Good." She kissed him again, softer this time. "Now get me out of here before I do something really unprofessional like climb you in front of your ex." He laughed, actual, genuine laughter that felt like freedom, and they left the reception hand in hand, stealing away like teenagers from a party they'd never wanted to attend. Behind them, through the tense entrance, he caught one last glimpse of Vanessa dancing with Trevor. Her face turned up to his, radiant and settled. And for the first time in 3 years, Dominic felt no regret, only relief, and the terrifying, exhilarating possibility of something new. The drive back to New York happened in comfortable silence, Mara's head against his shoulder, his hand in hers, the city lights growing closer. They didn't talk about what came next, didn't dissect the kiss or define the relationship or plan the logistics. Just existed in the fragile bubble of this moment before reality crashed back in. Reality crashed back in on Monday morning. Dominic arrived at his office at 6 a.m. and still riding the high of the weekend, still tasting Mara's goodbye kiss from Sunday night. They'd agreed to keep things quiet at work until they figured out the HR implications, until they had a plan. Professional distance during office hours, real life after. He was reviewing the Singapore contracts when his phone buzzed. Marcus Chen, board member, longtime adversary, perpetual thorn in his side. Conference room. "Now. We need to talk about your judgment." The words sent ice through his veins. He found Marcus already seated, along with 3 other board members. The intervention setup was impossible to miss. "Dominic, sit." Marcus gestured to the chair like he owned it. "We have concerns." "About?" "About you bringing your assistant as a date to Vanessa Hartford's wedding. About the photographs currently circulating on social media showing you kissing said assistant. About the optics of the CEO of Cross Industries engaging in what appears to be a deeply inappropriate workplace relationship." The floor dropped. "How did you—" "Twitter is forever, Dominic. Someone's cousin posted photos. They went semi-viral in business circles over the weekend. The hashtag CEO wedding crash is trending. Marcus slid a tablet across the table. Dominic looked. There he was, kissing Mara, her hands in his hair, his arm around her waist. The image was intimate, undeniable, and completely damning in a corporate context. "This is a private matter," he said carefully. "Nothing is private when you're the face of a publicly traded company." Marcus leaned forward. "We've tolerated your eccentricities, Dominic. Your 80-hour weeks, your obsessive control, your inability to delegate. But this is a liability. If Ms. Jennings decides you coerced her, if she claims harassment, if this blows up into an Our Me Too situation, she wouldn't. You don't know what she'd do if things end badly. And they always end badly with you, don't they? Vanessa could tell us that." Marcus smiled, sharp and unkind. "Here's our offer. You end this immediately. Transfer Ms. Jennings to another department or let her go with a generous severance. Return to focusing solely on the company. Or we start having conversations about your fitness as CEO, your judgment, your priorities. We have shareholders who are already nervous about the Jakarta expansion. This gives them ammunition. Play this wrong, and you'll find yourself on the outside of the empire you built." The threat was crystal clear. Mara, or everything he'd spent 20 years building. The woman who'd become his anchor, or the identity he'd constructed from nothing. "I need time," Dominic said. "You have 24 hours. Then we're making moves with or without your cooperation." He sat in his office for 3 hours, staring at the city spread below him like a kingdom he'd conquered. His phone buzzed constantly, texts from Mara asking if he was okay, emails about the Singapore deal, alerts about stock prices. The machinery of his empire grinding forward, indifferent to his personal crisis. The company or her. Choose. He thought about what Vanessa had said. "You chose the empire over us." Thought about Mara's condition. "If you choose the empire over me even once, I'm gone." His office door opened. Mara walked in, closing it behind her. "You've been avoiding me all day," she said. "What happened?" He told her. "Everything. Marcus, the photos, the ultimatum." Watched her face go carefully blank as she processed it. "So they want you to choose," she said quietly. "Yes. Between Cross Industries and me." "Yes." She walked to the window, arms wrapped around herself. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." "Liar." She turned, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You know exactly what you're going to do. You're going to choose the company, because that's who you are. That's who you've always been." "Mara, no. Let me save you the speech." She straightened, and he watched her rebuild her armor in real time. "I knew this was a risk. I knew who you were when I said yes. I thought maybe I could be the exception. But I'm not, am I? I'm just another thing that has to be sacrificed to feed the empire. That's not fair." "Fair?" Her laugh was bitter. "Dominic, you built a company from nothing. You're worth billions. You have power, influence, respect. And you're going to let Marcus Chen and a handful of scared board members bully you into giving up the first real thing you've felt in years because you're too afraid to fight for it. So no. Fair doesn't even enter the equation. You don't understand the pressure. I understand that you're a coward." The words landed like slaps. "I understand that when it came down to it, you couldn't choose love over legacy. Just like with Vanessa. Just like you'll do with the next woman and the next. Until you're 80 years old and alone in this office wondering why nobody stayed." "Stop." His voice cracked. "Please stop." "Why? Does the truth hurt?" She swiped at her eyes, angry. "I'm resigning. Effective immediately. I'll send the paperwork to HR today. You can tell Marcus and the board they won. You can tell yourself you had no choice, and you can go back to being the brilliant, lonely king of nothing that matters. She walked toward the door. Mara, wait. She paused, hand on the knob, but didn't turn around. I love you, he said. The words felt like breaking, like exposing the softest parts of himself to someone who could destroy him. I love you, and I don't know how to choose between you and everything I've built. I don't know how to be the man who walks away from this. Then you've already chosen, she said softly. You just don't want to admit it yet. The door closed behind her with devastating finality. Dominic stood in his empire, his glass tower, his view of the city, his proof that he mattered, and felt nothing but empty. The next 18 hours were the longest of Dominic's life. He called an emergency session with his lawyer, reviewed his contract, examined every legal angle. He sat through 2 conference calls and retained exactly none of the information. He stared at Mara's resignation letter, brief, professional, devastating, and couldn't bring himself to sign the acceptance. At 2 a.m., unable to sleep, he found himself in the archive room of his office building, pulling files from the early years. The years when Cross Industries was just an idea and a prayer, when he'd worked out of a studio apartment with secondhand furniture and lived on coffee and ambition. There was a photo paper clip to the first business plan. Him at 25, exhausted and electric, holding the contract for his first major client. He looked hungry, fearless, like he'd fight anyone who stood between him and his future. When had he stopped being that man? When had the empire become a cage instead of a kingdom? His phone buzzed. Not Mara. He'd been checking obsessively. A text from an unknown number. She's at Riverside Park, North Bench. She's been there for hours. Vanessa. Somehow his ex-fiancée had gotten Mara's location and was trying to fix what her wedding had broken. The irony wasn't lost on him. He ran. Out of the office into the September night, across town to Riverside Park. Found Mara exactly where Vanessa had said, sitting on a bench overlooking the Hudson, wrapped in a cardigan, face turned to the water. How did you find me? She asked without looking at him. Vanessa. Of course. Your ex-fiancé is better at taking care of me than you are. But there was no heat in it, just exhaustion. Dominic sat beside her, careful not to touch. I've been thinking about why I built all this, the company, the empire, the reputation, and I realized it was because when I was growing up, we had nothing. My father worked 3 jobs and still couldn't keep the lights on. I wore secondhand clothes and ate free lunch at school and swore that someday I'd matter, that I'd build something nobody could take away. Mara said nothing, but she was listening. And I did. I built it all. But somewhere along the way, mattering turned into not needing. And not needing turned into not letting anyone close enough to hurt me. Because if you don't need anyone, they can't leave. They can't prove that you're not enough. Dominic, let me finish. He turned to face her. I chose the company over Vanessa because I was afraid. Afraid that if I chose her, I'd lose myself. That I'd become my father, working himself to death for people who needed him and getting nothing back. So I chose the empire. And I was miserable. But at least I was safe. And now? Her voice was barely a whisper. Now I'm realizing that safety is just another word for lonely. And I don't want to be safe anymore. I want to be terrified. I want to choose you even though it scares me. I want to build a life instead of an empire. They'll try to force you out. Let them try. He took her hand, and she didn't pull away. I've been fighting for this company for 20 years. It's time I fight for something that actually matters. Someone who actually matters. What are you saying? I'm saying I called the board this afternoon. I told them I'm in a relationship with you and I'm not ending it. I told them if they have a problem with that, they can take it up with our lawyers. because I've reviewed my contract, and there's nothing in it that prevents me from dating an employee. I told them I'm transferring you to a different reporting structure so there's no conflict of interest, and I'm recommending you for VP of Strategic Operations because you're the best person for the job, and we both know it. Mara stared at him, eyes wide. You did what? I chose you. I'm choosing you. Today, tomorrow, for as long as you'll have me. He cupped her face, thumbs brushing away the tears on her cheeks. I'm still going to be a disaster. I'm still going to work too much and struggle with balance and probably screw this up in 17 different ways. But I want to try. With you. If the offer's still open. You're insane. Probably. Marcus is going to make your life hell. He already does. At least now I'll have you to come home to. This is the second worst pitch you've ever made. I'm consistent. He smiled, and it felt like breaking open in the best way. Is that a yes? That's a, you better not mess this up, Cross, because I'm not doing this again. She kissed him, and it tasted like salt and relief and new beginnings. But yes, you idiot. I'll try this with you. They sat on the bench, wrapped in each other, watching the city lights reflect off the Hudson. Dominic felt lighter than he had in years, like he'd finally put down a weight he'd been carrying so long he'd forgotten what it was. What did Vanessa say? Mara asked. When she texted you. Just your location, and one other thing. What? He pulled out his phone, showed her the message. This is what I meant. Good luck, Dominic. Don't screw it up. Mara laughed, the sound bright in the darkness. I like her. Don't get any ideas about friendship. It's weird enough that my ex is helping my current relationship. Your current relationship? She tested the words. That sounds terrifying. Absolutely. He kissed her temple. But I'm done running from terrifying things. Starting now. Starting now, she echoed. And in the space between one breath and the next, Dominic Cross, CEO, billionaire, builder of empires, chose to become something harder, a man willing to be known. The board meeting 3 days later was exactly as brutal as Dominic had anticipated. Marcus Chen opened with a PowerPoint, because of course he did, outlining all the reasons why Dominic's relationship with Mara Jennings represented a catastrophic failure of judgment and leadership. There were slides about workplace liability, corporate reputation, shareholder confidence. There were thinly veiled threats about calling for a vote of no confidence. Dominic let him talk. Let him build his case. Let him think he was winning. Then he stood. Marcus is right about one thing, he said, looking at each board member in turn. I did show poor judgment, for years. I chose this company over everything, relationships, health, any kind of life outside these walls. I told myself it was dedication. It was actually fear. Fear that if I stopped building, stopped fighting, stopped proving myself, I'd disappear. He pulled up his own presentation. One slide. A graph showing Cross Industries' growth over 20 years. I built this company from nothing. I made you all very wealthy in the process. And I did it by sacrificing everything else. But here's what I've learned. An empire built on fear and loneliness isn't an empire. It's a prison. And I'm done being its prisoner. This is very moving, Marcus interrupted, but completely irrelevant to... I'm not finished. Dominic's voice cut like steel. Mara Jennings is the best strategic mind I've ever worked with. She saved this company millions, caught errors that would have cost us clients, and has more integrity in her left hand than most of this board combined. I'm in a relationship with her. I'm promoting her. And if you have a problem with that, you can vote me out. The room went silent. But here's the thing. Dominic leaned forward, palms flat on the table. If you force me to choose between this company and her, I'll choose her. Every time. and I'll walk away from Cross Industries without a second thought. Then you'll have to explain to shareholders why you pushed out the CEO who built everything you're sitting on because you were uncomfortable with his personal life. You're bluffing, Marcus said, but his voice wavered. Try me. Dominic straightened. I spent 20 years building this empire, and I'll spend the next 20 building something that actually matters, with or without this company. Your call. He walked out, stood in the hallway, heart hammering, waiting to see if he'd just committed professional suicide or finally found his spine. The conference room door opened. Sarah Martinez, CFO, longtime ally, one of the few board members he actually respected, stepped out. That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the stupidest, she said. Probably both. Marcus is furious. He's calling for a vote. And I'm voting to table his motion indefinitely. So is David. So is Kim. You have enough support to survive this, Dominic. Barely. But you have it. She smiled. For what it's worth, I'm glad you finally figured out what matters. Me too. She went back inside. Dominic pulled out his phone, texted Mara. Still employed. Barely. Dinner tonight? Her response came immediately. Your place. I'll cook. Try not to get fired before then. He smiled, and it felt like freedom. That evening, Dominic came home to find his penthouse smelling like garlic and wine. Mara in his kitchen wearing one of his shirts and nothing else, humming off-key to jazz on the speaker. You cook? He asked, setting down his briefcase. Occasionally, when I'm celebrating not dating an unemployed former CEO. She turned, smiled, and he felt it in his chest. This overwhelming sense of rightness. How bad was it? Marcus called for my head. I told them to try. Sarah backed me up. I survived by a thread. So business as usual? Pretty much. He crossed to her, wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, breathed in the scent of her, cedar and wine and home. Thank you. For what? For being worth fighting for. For making me want to fight in the first place. She turned in his arms, and her eyes were serious. This is going to be hard, you know. We're going to have moments where work and personal get tangled, where we fight about business decisions or struggle with boundaries. This isn't a fairy tale. I know. And you're still going to be a workaholic who gets obsessive and forgets to eat and checks emails at midnight. Probably. And I'm still going to call you on your crap and refuse to be impressed by your money and generally make your life complicated. I'm counting on it. He kissed her forehead. Mara, I know this is real. I know it's messy. I know it's going to take work. But I'd rather fight with you than have easy with anyone else. That's actually a pretty good pitch. I'm improving. She kissed him then, slow and deep and full of promise. And Dominic thought about the man he'd been 3 weeks ago, the one who'd received a wedding invitation and felt nothing but dread. That man would never have believed he'd end up here, in his kitchen, with a woman who saw through him, choosing love over legacy. The pasta's going to burn, Mara murmured against his mouth. Let it. Dominic, we'll order takeout. I have more important things to do. Like what? Like proving to you that I meant every word I said, starting now. He lifted her onto the counter and she laughed, bright and unguarded, and his. And for the first time in his carefully constructed life, Dominic Cross stopped building empires and started building something harder, messier, infinitely more valuable. A life worth living. 6 months later, Dominic stood in his office at dusk, watching the city lights flicker on like promises. The view hadn't changed. The desk, the walls, the machinery of his empire, all still there. But everything felt different, lighter. His phone buzzed. Mara, done for the day. Meet me at home? Home. not his penthouse. Their apartment, the brownstone in Brooklyn they'd bought together, the one with the garden she was slowly filling with herbs, and the office where they both worked too late, but at least did it together. The one that felt like living instead of existing. He texted back, "Leaving now. Love you. Love you too. Don't forget we have dinner with Vanessa and Trevor tomorrow." He smiled. That was another impossibility that had become reality. Friendship with his ex-fiancée and her husband. It had been awkward at first, stilted and strange. But Vanessa had been persistent, and Trevor had been gracious. And now they met monthly for dinner where they talked about everything except the past. Heading out? Sarah poked her head into his office. Shocking. Dominic Cross leaving before midnight. Trying this new thing called work-life balance. How's it going? Terribly. But Mara insists. He grabbed his coat. Singapore deal close? This afternoon. We're in. And before you ask, yes, I made sure the labor agreements were fair. And yes, I ran everything past Mara. Your girlfriend is very thorough. VP of Strategic Operations, Dominic corrected. She earned the title. She did. Best decision you've made. Sarah smiled. Second best, anyway. After choosing to keep her. He left the office, rode the elevator down, stepped out into March evening air that smelled like rain and new beginnings. His car was waiting, but he waved it off. Decided to walk. The city moved around him, people heading home, heading out, living their lives in the spaces between work and rest. He'd spent so many years removed from this, insulated by wealth and ambition and fear. Now he let himself be part of it, just another man walking home to someone who mattered. His phone rang. Marcus Chen. Dominic, the Jakarta expansion. Can wait until tomorrow, Dominic said. I'm done for the day. It's barely 7. I know. Revolutionary, right? We'll talk in the morning. He hung up, and it felt like power of a different kind. Not the power to control or dominate or build. The power to choose, to set boundaries, to protect what mattered. The brownstone glowed warm in the dusk. He took the steps 2 at a time, opened the door to music and cooking smells, and Mara's voice calling, "You're early. I'm not even dressed yet." "Perfect," he called back, hanging up his coat. "I like you undressed." She appeared in the hallway wearing paint-stained jeans and one of his old Columbia t-shirts, hair in a messy bun, glasses sliding down her nose. She looked nothing like the polished professional she presented at work. She looked real and rumpled in his. "You're staring," she said. "I am." "Why?" "Because 6 months ago, I didn't think I could have this. Any of this. And now I come home to you every night and it still feels impossible." She crossed to him, wrapped her arms around his neck. "Get used to it, Cross. You're stuck with me. Promise. Promise." She kissed him, and it tasted like forever. "Dinner's ready. I made that pasta you like." "The one that takes hours?" "The same. Don't look so surprised. I can be domestic when I want to be." They ate on the couch, talking about their days, the Jakarta expansion, the new client she'd landed, the ongoing war with Marcus that had settled into grudging respect. Normal things, beautiful things, things Dominic had never thought he'd want, let alone have. "I got a call from Forbes today," Mara said, twirling pasta on her fork. "They want to do a feature on power couples in tech, specifically us." And I told them maybe, but I wanted to check with you first. I know we've kept things relatively private. Dominic considered it. 6 months ago, he would have said no immediately, would have seen it as exposure, vulnerability, ammunition for enemies. Now. Let's do it, he said. Really? Really? I'm not hiding you. Not ever. She smiled, and it still had the power to undo him. You've changed, you know, in good ways. You changed me. No, I just made you brave enough to change yourself. Later, lying in bed with Mara curled against his chest, the city quiet beyond their windows, Dominic thought about the man he'd been, the one who'd built an empire on fear and loneliness and the terror of not mattering. That man was still there, still driving, still ambitious, but he wasn't alone anymore. And that made all the difference. What are you thinking? Mara murmured, half asleep. That I'm grateful. For what? For you. For this. For Vanessa inviting me to her wedding and you being crazy enough to come with me. For every moment that led here. She tilted her face up to his. You know what I'm grateful for? What? That you finally figured out that being known doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And human is so much better than perfect. He kissed her then, slow and deep, and felt the last pieces of his old armor fall away. He'd spent 20 years building walls to keep people out, to prove he didn't need anyone, to protect himself from the pain of mattering to someone else. Now he understood that the walls hadn't protected him. They'd just made the world smaller. I love you, he said, in case I don't say it enough. You say it plenty. She settled back against him. But I'll never get tired of hearing it. Good. Because I plan on saying it for the next 50 years. Only 50? Let's start there and renegotiate. She laughed, and the sound filled their home, their life, the space they'd built together out of courage and second chances and the willingness to be seen. Outside, the city dreamed on. Empires rising and falling, people searching for meaning, for connection, for proof that they mattered. Dominic had found his proof here, in this moment, in this woman's arms. Not in the empire he'd built, but in the life he'd chosen. And that made all the difference. In the end, this wasn't just a story about a billionaire, an ex-fiancée's wedding, or even about bringing the right person to prove something to the world. It was about the hardest choice any of us face, the choice between safety and truth, between the version of ourselves we've built to survive, and the version we could become if we're brave enough to be known. Dominic spent 20 years constructing an empire because he believed that's what would make him matter. That achievement, wealth, and power were the currencies of worth. And maybe they are, in certain rooms, on certain balance sheets. But they're not the currency of love. They're not the currency of home. Love requires something harder than building. It requires tearing down. It demands that we dismantle the walls we've so carefully constructed, that we stand vulnerable and unarmored in front of another human being and say, this is who I am. All of it. The brilliant parts and the broken parts. See me. Choose me anyway. That's the empire worth building. Not one made of steel and stock prices, but one made of trust, honesty, and the daily choice to show up for someone even when, especially when, it scares us. Mara didn't save Dominic. She just refused to let him hide. And in refusing to let him hide, she gave him permission to finally be whole. So here's my question for you. What empire are you building? And more importantly, what are you sacrificing to build it? Is it worth the cost of being known? If this story made you think differently about success, love, or what it means to be brave, I'd love to know. Drop your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments below, and tell me what moment hit you hardest. And if you believe that some stories don't just entertain, but challenge us to examine our own walls, our own fears, our own choices between safety and truth, subscribe, because there are more journeys ahead, More characters learning what it means to be human. More chances to explore what happens when we're finally brave enough to choose love over legacy. Thank you for being here, for listening, for opening your heart to Dominic and Mara's story. Now go build something worth keeping.